to Busted Speakers. I'm Alex.
I'm Cam.
And I'm Ed.
And today we're reviewing the 7th album from Jason Isbell and the 400 Unit, known alternatively as just his name and the 400 Unit. Regardless, we're reviewing his 7th solo album that he's done since leaving the Drive-By Truckers. Basically, Jason Isbell is one of my favourites in the country sphere. I look out for when it comes to new music, along with Sturgill Simpson and Chris Stapleton. Basically, I find him to be an extremely emotional, strong performer. His voice is the main reason I like him, which is true of a lot of country or just singer-songwriter people. He has extremely personal material that is very easy to connect with, and the way he sings it, even if it's not directly from his own personal life, just the way he puts himself in the shoes of the narrator of the songs, very highly effective, it feels real, and the personal imagery he conjures up is very strong. Just high quality music at the end of the day. So I was very happy with this album, Reunions. So before we talk a little bit more about the album, did either of you guys have any past experience with Jason Isbell? Or just Americana in general, or country music?
You go ahead, Cam.
Yeah, I mean, we've established that I'm kind of the only one of us with regular exposure to country and Americana, being that I am, in fact, an Americano.
Yep.
Like, the Drive-By Truckers have always been on my radar. I've got a couple of albums, both from his tenure in the band, and so he himself has also been on my radar. He's a name that I've heard before, but I've never bothered to investigate him before now.
Fair enough.
Yes, suffice it to say, I'm sorry it took so long, because this is a really solid album.
Yeah.
Glad to hear it.
As for me, this is where the cracks are really going to start to show, because I typically am very enthusiastic about talking about music in a greater context, I suppose, of like the genre that houses it, and the history of the particular band or artist that we're covering. And in this case, this is one of those albums where I have absolutely zero prior experience with the artist. I'm aware of the Drive-By Truckers, like I know who they are. I've known who they were. When you first floated this album to us, Alex, I didn't know that Jason Isbell was a member of that band for a period of their tenure. But I also wasn't aware of his solo material. I just wasn't aware of him at all. And I'm glad you recommended this one to us, man, because it's a really comfortable listen. This isn't the most amazing music I've heard all year. I'd say it has a lot in common with the Stephen Malkmus album we reviewed, Traditional Techniques. Not so much stylistically or musically, but just in how cozy it feels. It feels like an album that you could sit down in a big chair with a glass of whiskey and just have a nice little comfortable listen to it.
That is a very nice way to put it, and I definitely agree that this is sort of comfort music.
Yeah.
Just like comfort food. Like, sometimes we need music like this, and in general, that's what Jason's music has been for me. Like, I love his last 4 albums, including this one. So, I'd say this just continues the great trend of quality music he's been putting out.
Yeah, and in terms of the coziness or the comfort of it, I'd say, like you were saying, he puts a lot of emotion into these songs, and it 100% comes through. These are very traditionally written songs, as you'd probably expect from Americana, but it doesn't weigh them down, really. They're just doing exactly what they say on the tin, really. But even though they are quite emotional songs, they're still incredibly easy to listen to. The performances are very good across the board, and I got a good sense of Jason's kind of strengths as a songwriter. But in terms of talking about this in a greater context than that, you're not going to get much out of me. And also in terms of going into individual tracks, I'm so glad this isn't a track by track, because I would be completely lost. I just don't have enough frames of reference for this type of music, so apologies for not being able to go too in depth on it, but I'm glad you kind of gave me a little bit of a gateway into this guy's music in particular. Maybe it'll lead me down a path to where I'm actually more familiar with Americana as a genre and a movement. But for now, I'll just be enjoying this with my whiskey in my big chair. I don't actually drink whiskey, by the way. I just want to set that out as a disclaimer. It was more of a mental image that was conjured up from listening to this album, but I think it's a fitting one.
Yeah, down in the easy chair. Yeah, rocking chair. I'm just glad that you tried this one out, Ed, and with an open mind, like outside your comfort zone a little bit.
Yeah. I mean, I did definitely feel like I wouldn't be fully prepared for this review, and I don't 100% feel like I am, but it's a case where I'm glad you recommended it, because I think I just have a weird thing of whenever someone recommends an artist to me that I've never heard of, I always go and listen to them. Whereas if it's an artist that's being talked about and I'm already kind of vaguely have a passing familiarity with them, I feel less inclined to go check it out, because, you know, using sites like Rate Your Music and whatnot, you kind of have an awareness of what's popular in the underground. Not to say that this album isn't popular, but it's out of my usual wheelhouse, so I felt inclined to check it out and hop on the review.
Fair play. So, as Ed said, we are not doing a track by this. Mercy. I mean, we just did the Hayley Williams Petals for Armor one, so
15 tracks.
I think it's fair. 15 tracks, yeah. That one will be up on the channel at some point if you want to check that out. But I think it's fair to ask, did you have a specific favourite track of any kind? Or was it just a overall consistent listen, guys?
I tend to go obvious way too often, but I still can't really help it here. What Have I Done to Help is an absolute monster of an opener, and it introduces I'm sure, I don't know if he or whoever the lead guitarist is has ever used this before on previous records, but just introduces for the album this like amazing screaming, almost Pink Floyd-y guitar sound that I absolutely loved. I just eat that up whenever I hear it.
Past album, the Nashville Sound also has quite a bit of this on some songs if you want more of this.
Yeah, I'll have to check that out. And then my other two favorites are River, which just had a really interesting story to it of personifying a river. And then I thought, oh, that's kind of interesting. It reminded me of a song called Sweet Afton by Nickel Creek, which was adapted from a Robert Burns poem. And it's literally just like a guy at the edge of a river reminiscing about it and his wife and all that wonderful stuff. But then I read the lyrics and I realized that it's about a guy who kills a neighbor and tries to get away with it.
Yeah, you can definitely hear that in the lyrics in the second half of River.
Yeah, and I'm like, okay, well, that took a turn, but that doesn't make me love it any less. It's still that just makes it even more unique, probably. And then I think I've established this before, like in previous reviews, that for some reason I'm a huge sucker for songs that are just about parents appreciating their kids, especially when they're done in ways that aren't like painfully cheesy. So the closer, Letting You Go, is a great entry into that subset, and just it spoke to me. I like it.
Yeah, there's definitely songs where he gets really personal, like Letting You Go. He speaks about his own daughter, which he has with his wife, Amanda Shires, who is in the 400 unit and does backing vocals and plays the fiddle on, I think, all of these songs. Another interesting fact I found out when I was reading up on the performers on this album, I had to check if it wasn't just a guy with the same name as the famous one with this name, but apparently David Crosby has some backing vocals on this album.
It is, in fact, David Crosby.
I don't know if it's all the songs, I doubt that, but somewhere the Crosby, Stills and Nash, the guy from the Byrds, he wasn't in the band when they did this, but David Crosby, but when the Byrds arguably invented country rock, which this is a form of, that's kind of cool. That's kind of a cool full circle thing there.
You could say it's a reunion.
Nice.
Get out.
We had exactly 100% opposite reactions to that, Cam.
I mean, I make bad puns all the time, so I need to overreact when somebody else steals my thunder.
Any favourites here, Ed? Or just, like you said, a consistent, cozy listen?
Yeah. To further on that point, I don't really have a single favourite track. I think the vast majority of these songs can all be described as solid. I'm not going to lie, I don't find any of them to be particularly amazing or special. This is a very traditional sounding album, and I know I say I don't have much experience with the genre of Americana, but I do have a fair bit of experience with country and country rock, and it's definitely very close to that wheelhouse. It's not venturing too far outside of that, and it's not trying to, really. It's more just on the strength of the songwriting, the strength of the performances. They're not trying to reinvent the wheel, I guess.
Yeah.
In terms of standouts, I would say I definitely took note of the song It Gets Easier. I really like the vibe of that song. It feels quite cathartic towards the end of the album. And What Have I Done to Help is really good as well. I was kind of surprised to see people seem to be reacting to that song fairly negatively, including a lot of Jason Isbell fans. Like, it was considered something of a disappointment as a single, which...
Yes, that is something to note.
I'm kind of baffled by it, because it's really solid opener. It could have stood to be a bit shorter. I understand it's going for the long, winding, sort of mantra-type approach that... Funnily enough, the first track on Stephen Malkmus's album that we reviewed that I referenced earlier, it does exactly the same thing on there. But the bass line on here is really good. The chorus has a lot of conviction to it, even though it's repeated many times. I don't get sick of it at all. And just like with the rest of the album across the board, solid lyrics, you know? So nothing stands out like amazingly to me, but it is consistently a good album that I'd say there's only a couple of minor duds on here, just songs that I thought were okay. Like River was one of those, and I'm speaking mostly musically here. I haven't really gone into the lyrics on this one all that much, because perhaps it's just relaxed me a little too much every time I've listened to it to really fully pay attention to the lyrics. But like I say, this is a style of music. It is out of my comfort zone, so maybe it has something to do with that. But yeah, River was an okay song.
Yeah, River uses a piano as the main instrument, which is interesting. I don't always think of piano in terms of country music. I know it's always used quite a bit, but you know, piano as an instrument, I'd say it's better used in jazz, classical, blues, times pop and rock. But I think it was used pretty well here.
Yeah, definitely. I can't complain about any of the performances on here, really. There was one guitar solo, I couldn't tell you what track it was on, that I thought was a bit cheesy sounding, but maybe that just comes with the genre, really. I'm not sure. I'd say aside from River and the closing track, which I thought was a bit... not the best way of closing things out. It had a good sentiment lyrically that Cam mentioned, but probably one of my least favourite songs here. Everything else is just good.
Okay, that's interesting. That two of ones you consider duds were two of Cam's favourites. But
I assure you that wasn't intentional.
I'm just gonna go curl up and cry.
I'll quickly go over my favourites, and then, we've kind of covered it. I mean, if you're a fan of Jason Isbell, this is exactly just another great installment. Like, if you're looking for just someone who's going to please you each time with a new release, this does the job.
Yeah, Alex, I'm assuming you kind of knew exactly what to expect from this one, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. Is that fair to say?
That is fair to say, but interestingly, they did release Be Afraid as the lead single, which, along with What Have I Done to Help, also alienated a lot of Isbell fans. Now, I understand why this was a single, Be Afraid. It's not really a country song. It delves into a more rock sound, not dissimilar to what Sturgill Simpson done on Sound and Fury. I like when country musicians, go out of their comfort zone, try a slightly different style, and it works. I think this has a really good hook, be afraid, be very afraid, but do it anyway. That's just got such a strong melodic cadence to it.
That song and It Gets Easier, both the strongest hooks on the album, I'd say. Yeah. Maybe the opener as well.
I think it was smart to release that as a lead single, because it has a slight chance of having some reach outside of ordinary country fan bases. Very slight chance. I don't think it's 100 miles away from an Arcade Fire type song. I could definitely see them kind of maybe covering it. But they've done a lot of Heartland rock type stuff anyway. You could compare to Bruce Springsteen. What Have I Done to Help? We've all commented on it. I just think this is a really great meditative piece. Personal mantra, like you were saying, Ed. It's long, it repeats the chorus a lot. But there's little musical parts in the background I really like little keyboard organ parts, some cool electric guitar towards the end, like Pink Floyd-y type stuff Cam was saying. I just find it really good as something to put in the background, just something to chill out to, kinda. Definitely goes for the sort of Bruce Hornsby type of long-length country song type thing. I like every song here, if that's not already clear. But Overseas is probably my very favourite. Very emotional song. I don't think this is Jason talking about himself. Maybe some parts of his own life is put here, but I don't know. Either way, he filled in the narrator's shoes really well. He's talking about someone, probably his wife. They're still in love, but he's out of reach. Just something about the way he says, but you're overseas, is kind of heartbreaking. And the guitar after it just strengthens this. It's a very relatable song, or just a very understandable song, yearning for something you can't have. It's not breaking new ground, but it's just a very, really good song.
It's like a way less dodgy version of Across the Sea by Weezer.
Oh, I thought we were going to do Across the Sea by Bobby Darin there. You know that old... Oh, that's Beyond the Sea, sorry. Beyond the Sea. Oh, God. Yeah, Only Children, that's a very haunting song. There's some very beautiful hushed female backing vocals. They give it a sort of ghostly quality. You can hear that in the intro and the sort of after the second verse. Song of perseverance, striving beyond poor means and dreaming big despite being only children and maybe not being from a very affluent background. You can read into Jason Isbell's own background as well. There's definitely songs here that, get informed by the way he was raised. So
yeah, I'm sure a lot of the lyrical content of this album would resonate more if I had anything more than just no familiarity in the slightest with Jason Isbell, or like I said, the genre as a whole.
But that's so rare nowadays.
So maybe once I familiarize myself with all that, maybe I'll enjoy this even more than I already do. In fact, true. I probably will.
It's so rare now to know almost nothing about a person when you're listening to an album. Information is so easy to come by about people. If you want it, it's there in some form. So it's probably quite nice just to hear an album by a guy and a band that is overall pretty good, I'd say.
Yeah.
Closing thoughts, guys?
I liked this album a fair bit. I think it's really solid. As I've said a bunch of times, it's not the sort of thing that I would seek out normally, because despite having been into music for a fair few years at this point, there's still a bunch of genres that I haven't really even dipped my toes in. A lot of metal in particular, I just don't have much history with, even though there's a bunch of metal albums that are some of my absolute favourite albums ever. And it's a similar case with this. I really just enjoyed this for what it was and didn't feel like I needed to have that context to enjoy it, because they're just, on the surface, they're just good songs. There's not many single moments that I can single out and say, oh, that was a great moment, because like I said, it was just a cozy, comfortable listen with only a few tracks that I thought were just kind of decent, and the rest was really solid. Jason Isbell's voice is very pleasant as well. I think he definitely carries it a lot through that. That contributes a lot to the cozy vibe. But yeah, overall, I'm going to give this a 6, with the potential for that score to go up, perhaps.
Nice.
This is not a slight against the album, but I do think it is a great background listen. You mentioned about the opening track being great background listening. It's not really how I listen to music. I can only really fully figure out how I feel about music if I'm sitting down, headphones on, just doing nothing but paying attention to the music. But you don't need to do that for this.
It's a cozy, reliable listen. So yeah. The fact that in it of itself,
it's a
endears
praise
itself to being a background listen.
Yeah. Because it's easily digestible. You don't need to dig into this album a whole ton to really get what it's about. You don't need to dig into Jason Isbell's past material to jump into this one and enjoy it. So from the perspective of someone who has been in that position with this, I've listened to this and now I want to check out his older stuff and hopefully explore the genre of Americana as a whole a lot more. Solid performances across the board, solid songs. It's just really solid, really comfortable album. Yeah.
Cam?
Cam. Oh, wait, that's me.
Oh, yeah.
So, this is one of those albums that kind of runs a whole spectrum of clear standout songs with, great music, great lyrics, personal stories or very well-told, made-up stories, and songs that are, I read the title and oh, yeah, I remember enjoying that while it was playing, but darned if I can remember how it goes right now. There's just like some songs, like this was recorded before the the COVID outbreak and everything, but there's some stuff that like would have just like emphasized certain elements of this whole situation really well. Like there's the line in the bridge of Be Afraid, we won't shut up and sing, that's like pretty clearly a reference to the Dixie Chicks, and that would have made an awesome companion to their album Gaslighter if the darn thing had been released when it was planned to be. And then like there's another line in verse 3. It's like if your words add up to nothing, then you're making a choice to sing a cover when we need a battle cry. I'm like, that like totally predicted the celebrities singing Imagine thing on Twitter from a couple months ago.
Oh my god.
I'm like, that's so weird how much that ties in, and yet the song like doesn't really seem to live up to it. Like, I don't want to be too harsh or anything, but like I said, it runs a whole spectrum of great obvious standouts to tracks that are a little more forgettable, but that I might appreciate more on returning to the album. So all things considered, especially with the great like I was saying, the Floydy type guitar solos, I think I can easily give this one a 7 out of 10, and I'll definitely be checking out more of his previous albums from here.
Yeah, that was what I was going to ask, but I think you've both said anyway that you're both interested in checking out more based on this.
Yeah, which one would you recommend next? Because I've seen a lot of people rave about the album Southeastern, which was just under the name Jason Isbell, no 400 unit to be found there.
Yeah, that's like the big fan favourite that kind of broke him out. It gave him a lot of fans. It was kind of like a breakthrough, because he did have 3 albums before that, but they're sort of still lesser known to some degree. My personal favourite is actually the Nashville Sound, which was the one before this, and I think it will work really well from this one. There's some really great songs on there, like If We Were Vampires, Tupelo, Molotov. I'd say has the same emotional parts to this album, but even stronger songwriting, even more memorable hooks. So I'd say that album's slightly better, but this is still a great continuation from there. Southeastern's really good too. I've only just gone into that album. I only got it a few weeks ago, so I'm still digesting it right now. But he's one artist I can say I've never heard a bad song from, which isn't true of like the Beatles or the Rolling Stones or Bob Dylan. So take that for what you will. I'm gonna give this an 8 out of 10. Exactly what I wanted from him. Pretty much exactly what I needed right now. Really great, comforting listen. Inspired, emotional performances from him and the band. Great songwriting, personal lyrics. It's really consistent. I mean, I almost don't have any flaws. Like you said, it doesn't really break new ground, but he doesn't really need to. Just excellent stuff. A cool 8 out of 10 from me.
Nice.
And I just, in general, really just like Jason Isbell as a person. He released this album in solidarity with record stores a week before it was released digitally, or by online orders, in solidarity with record stores, which is really cool.
That's excellent. That's what we need right now, really, because I have a lot of worries over the record store industry at the moment, so it needs all the support it can get.
Really cool guy, really good album. I'm as happy as can be with this.
Nice.
Thank you for listening to Busted Speakers on our review of Reunions by Jason Isbell and the 400 Unit. Let us know what you think of the album below. Subscribe if you want any more album reviews. Also, we're trying some other new series as well. Check us out on Facebook. We're on Twitter as well. Cam has his own handle, at SubProspector, I believe.
Yep.
Okay, that's all the intel, or what's the word? Not intel, admin. It's all the admin taken care of. So we'll see you all next time. Bye.
Bye.
Have a good one, guys.